Happy Halloween, everybody. This is Rebecca with Red True Crime. So we are going to talk about some interesting and controversial like cases tonight. So before I get into that, I'd say thank you for all the support. Thank you for all the sharing and the comments and the likes and all that good stuff. However, could always use more subscribers. So if you have not subscribed, please do so. Doesn't cost anything and it gets the information out to other people. So thank you very much. Okay. So let's talk about this. Earlier today, I was made aware of a case that happened here yesterday of a woman who was arrested for desecrating graves in a local Greensboro cemetery. So we have one, let me find her here. Yaquanda Vonasha Dixon. She looks very angry. Now, she was charged with felony disturbing a casket or grave marker following an incident at the local cemetery. That is what she was charged with. Now, per the news, it looked like she damaged about 11 different gravestones. And, she's being, accused of vandalism and desecration. And the authorities describe it as a deliberate act captured in real time by responding officers. She also was spitting on officers when they tried to arrest her, and right now, as it stands, she is being held up for a $2,500 or $25,000 bond, but she has to pay $2,500. So there's more information going on about this, but let's see. This happened yesterday at the 2000 block of Phillips Avenue in Greensboro. And this area is part of a historic community maintained burial ground. So burial graves. And let's see. They said that the Greensboro PD responded to a report of women actively vandalizing the grounds, and upon arrival, they have observed Dixon damaging grave markers and estimated that 11 grave sites were affected. Acts reportedly including breaking, defacing, or otherwise disturbing headstones, caskets, or markers. Um, they've not said how she was just, disturbing them. She had like a hammer or screwdriver or something. And let's see. And she's being charged with a felony and looks like she's going back to court in November. So, but here's a little bit of a background on her. She already had another court case she was dealing with. Um, she was arrested last year for abusing and misusing 911. So here you go, misuse of the 911 system. And on the date of August 31st, 2024, the offense shown, she called the emergency 911 line approximately 20 times since 2:30 in the morning, and Miss Dixon does not need any emergency assistance and is just upset that her children were taken away. So, this is a face right here of someone who is obviously extremely angry, extremely disturbed, and most likely off her rocker. I mean, there was a reason her children were taken away. Now, I know any woman whose children are taken away by CPS would probably go a little crazy. But I think she's got more issues than that, and I dare say this is a face of someone who most likely has some type of psychiatric issue that's not being addressed. So right now she's in jail for desecrating graves and also from this misuse of 911 from a year before because she never went to court on that. So they've reinstituted that. But this is small potatoes compared to the other cases we're talking about here tonight. So let's move on to Bianca Ellis. Now, if you don't know her name and you don't know her picture, you might know their picture. The little boy is Julian Wood. The woman with the glasses is his mother, Margot Wood. And Julian Wood and Margot Wood were being stalked by Bianca Ellis in a grocery store. Now, I've talked about this case before. I even showed the video footage where earlier that day she went to like a thrift store, stole some knives, and was just walking around with a knife at her side, just kind of swinging it, and nobody noticed. And I don't understand how nobody noticed this. And she goes into the store and she's just walking around, again, swinging the knife at her side with nobody noticing. And then Margot Wood and her son Julian walk right past her, and she completely does a complete turnaround and starts following them through the store and then out the door. And then when they got out in the parking lot, she came over and she started stabbing Julian. And she also stabbed Margot, but the wounds that Julian Wood sustained were fatal. And this 3-year-old little boy did not survive. Now, Bianca Ellis, her case just got heard in the court system and is now concluded as of a couple of days ago. So, what I'm talking about in her situation, though, is she had just been arrested for a mental health concern, like where she just completely went nuts on somebody. They arrested her, they put her in an institution. She got released immediately. And she had had multiple documented histories of mental attacks, mental instabilities, and they would take her for a short time, and then they would medicate her, and then they would turn her loose. But now, because she was not being compliant with her medication or therapies, she has now gone and stabbed a woman and killed her 3-year-old son in public. And because of that, after a week-long trial marked by expert testimony on mental state, Ellis was convicted on all counts and sentenced to life in prison without parole on October 27th, 2025. So her defense attorneys plan on appealing, and they keep saying, mental illness, mental illness, mental illness. But, and however, they were able to evaluate her and determine that she knew right from wrong, which is why she did not get sent to a mental health facility, which I still say, even though she was convicted of this because of her long history of schizophrenia, which is what she actually has, she should be sent to a mental health institution instead of a prison. That's just my thought on that. But if we go into it, this happened in Cleveland, Ohio last year. She was diagnosed with schizophrenia around 2011, and she had approximately 13 hospitalizations for acute episodes, often due to refusing medication. She received outpatient treatment and for about 9 years, but frequently lapsed into noncompliance. Court records reveal a pattern of erratic behavior, including false confessions to unrelated crimes, like she claimed she killed somebody out in California, and threats of violence, such as telling police in February that she wanted to kill someone and eat their flesh. Um, and her criminal record was minor and nonviolent prior to the incident, like shoplifting, criminal trespass, traffic violations, probation violation in Florida. I mean, this woman's been all over the place. So she was in California, she was in Ohio, she was in Florida, and that may have made it hard to actually keep her compliant on medications and treatments too. But days before the stabbing on May 30th of 2024, she was arrested at a Walmart for a probation violation, and then really shortly after. And then on the morning of June 3rd, she visited the North Olmsted Police Department to discuss that arrest, appearing coherent enough to engage in conversation. So they didn't think anything was up. And then around later on that afternoon, around 3 o'clock, that's when she went to the thrift store, shoplifted, and then walked over to the grocery store, Giant Eagle, and then started following them around and then stabbed them. So, a lot was going on with this case. But at the same time, though, why did it take for her to kill somebody for her to get any type of real help? If she was not compliant on her medication long before she ever got violent, maybe she should have been institutionalized. The case with the woman, damaging the gravestones, a friend of mine was like, I wish they'd bring back forced commitments, basically involuntary commitments, which they do still have. But the patient they have to be able to prove the patient is going to be hurting themselves or hurting someone else. So it takes almost killing somebody or actually killing somebody for that to even happen. But I dare say she was exhibiting things days before that she probably should have been committed, and if she had been committed, this child would still be alive. So, that's a good question, like, should we bring back involuntary commitment? Should we make it easier to commit somebody involuntarily? I don't know. And then we get to the case that's gonna be coming up here very shortly on the federal level, the stabbing of Irina Zaruska in Charlotte, North Carolina. Now, she was a Ukrainian immigrant who escaped the war, was trying to build a new life, and she was fatally stabbed on a train in Charlotte. Um, this one was insane because they showed the video because, there's video camera footage showing how he's already sitting there, she sits in front of him, she's reading a book, and then moments later, he stands over and starts stabbing her. And you see the surprised look on the people across from him and her, they're like, "What the hell just happened?" It's still insane. So and it's a light train rail. But she was stabbed more than 20 times in the neck and chest, and she sat there unaware. And then Brown, who just left. People, I mean, they saw the blood dripping off the knife, they saw a trail of blood all over the floor. Nobody really said anything to this guy. Now, with him, he's another one who had a massive history of psychological issues. There's even a recorded conversation that was released after he was arrested for this case here, between him and his sister, and she's talking to him like, "Why did you do this? Why? What happened?" And, you could tell in that conversation, he's very paranoid. I think he thought she was like Secret Service or some, spy agency or whatever, but you could tell he's severely disturbed mentally. So, but they even said he described his episodes of paranoia such as believing man-made materials controlled his body, leading to erratic 911 calls. He had 14 prior cases since 2017 when he was 16, and misdemeanors like trespassing, communicating threats, and injury to property, plus 2 felonies. Many of the cases were dismissed due to failure to repair, and he frequently violated probation. He was homeless at the time of the stabbing and had no stable employment history and public records. And despite welfare checks and minor arrests in 2024, no sustained intervention occurred, highlighting systematic gaps in mental health support. So he just didn't have the support. Um, and I'm just like reading all of this stuff. He keeps getting, out and then rearrested. But again, he has multiple cases of mental health issues here. And, August 22nd of this year was when he fatally stabbed Irina Zaruska. And because this happened on a public transit system, he is now facing federal charges and can get the death penalty. Yeah, federal charges. He's facing first degree murder in Mecklenburg County, which is in Charlotte, and no bond due to flight risk and history. Um, and he's also getting federal charges for committing an act causing death on a mass transportation system, which is crazy because I don't think they've actually thrown this out there too often. Um, Now they did do a mental health evaluation on him, and let's see here, they did a competency assessment, and the results are pending. And you know, public scrutiny on this case it was spotlighted because cashless bail and delayed evaluations. So because, we have a cashless bail system in North Carolina, he was just able to just go without having to pay any money for bond or anything. And maybe had we not had that and he had to pay something, they could have thrown him into the mental health system and gotten him help. But it is what it is. But they're still waiting on competency results as of today. So they still have not gotten those. So they don't know if he is even fit to stand trial for what he did. But usually, here's what happens when you have cases like this, they'll delay the trial to allow mental health professionals to evaluate this guy. And about every 6 months, they'll see, okay, what's the report? What's the report? What's the report? And once they deem he is competent, and that could take a month, 6 months to a year for that to even happen. But once he's declared competent, they will charge him on the federal level and they'll give him the death penalty. So once he's been deemed competent, he will get the death penalty. And I don't know if that's fair because if he's schizophrenic or whatever, he'll never be completely competent. He stays on medication, yeah, possibly, but if he's off medication, he can't be held responsible for what he did, in my opinion. He can't. But I don't know what the real answer on this is, but I do feel that it should be easier to involuntarily commit people, but I do see where that can be abused if, because I mean, that's why we have the rules we have today, is because it was abused. Women who were a little more morally loose were committed to mental institutions for that reason. It shouldn't be like that, that kind of crap. Or people who defied the police, they were committed to mental health institutions. Same. This happened in the movie. What was it? The Changeling with Brad Pitt, Angelina Jolie. Yes, there we go. That was a true crime case where a boy went missing. This is back in the late 1920s, early 1930s. Child went missing, and she was doing everything she could to find him, and then the LAPD found a child that was in the middle of, Midwest and had him carted back as he claimed to be Walter Collins, her son. When he gets there, she's like, "That's not my kid," and they made her take this kid home and say, "Oh, give it some time, give it some time." She's like, "No, that's not my child," and when she kept pushing back, they had her committed to a mental institution. And it turned out the child was not her son. He was lying, he was running away from home, and he didn't wanna go home. And they do think her son was a victim of the, Riverside chicken coop killers. It was a guy and his mother who were kidnapping boys and torturing them and whatnot and killing them and burying them under a chicken coop. And they think Walter Collins was one of those kids. But that case was never, ever officially solved. But here we go, back to mental health. Here's signs where we have now gotten so far away from doing what is good for people, um, that we've got people that are just out there killing other people, and there's nothing that can be done. And then we've got back in the olden days where we had a little bit more looser rules to involuntary commit people, and it was abused because you didn't want to listen to people. You didn't want to, people were bucking up at the system and saying this isn't right, so let's just lock you away. And it was her case and a few others, that's what blew up the whole system of mental health and the involuntary commitment. So, I digress. But I don't know what the answer is, everybody. I don't know. You tell me. You make your comments, you give me your suggestions. What is the answer to this? How do we help prevent murder down the road by committing these people today? You tell me. What's the best way to do it? Bring back involuntary commitments or keep things the way they are? So, this is Rebecca with Red True Crime. I'm gonna hop off here. But, thank you again for, tuning in and listening to me go on about this, and, happy Halloween. Don't eat too much candy. So, good night, be careful, and as I always say, be weird, be rude, be safe. Bye.